Sorin Faibish from EMC. He's a distinguished engineer in the Fast Data Group's Office of CTO at EMC. His main work is in architecture. This is really long.
It's okay.
Sorin is my own personal hero.
PNFS.
All right, let's see. Direct contributor to PNFS protocol. I know Sorin as somebody who's done a lot of pushing and contribution to getting Lustre in the Linux kernel, and that's why he's my hero. Ladies and gentlemen, Sorin.
Thank you. Okay, so first of all, I need to thank to Branislav, that was a very close contributor and a helper with all the work we're doing here. Unfortunately, he cannot be here today for different reasons, but he's here with Saul. So I'm the chair, let's say, of the metadata sub-working group of the benchmark working group, and this is the group that I represent, and I'm mostly interested in this metadata because, you know, my previous background, you know, I'm a spec SFS member, and I know that everybody, mostly of people in this room, are using some type of NFS server, and through that I end up with higher performance in Lustre, and I'm trying to address the weaknesses in that area. And so the goal of our group was mainly to build tools or recommend tools that will be used by people that were supposed to buy Lustre file systems or to use Lustre file system in their environments, and they need some way of knowing if what they buy is suitable for their workloads. And I personally am interested mostly in metadata part because what's happening, you know, I got slapped in the face many times for the last 2-3 years since I'm involved in Lustre, as when people, when I'm talking about performance of Lustre metadata, they say this science. Pretty much, and I'm talking about serious people that understand performance. So I felt very bad, and I want to fight back, but unfortunately, I don't know how to fight back yet. So that's why this work is relevant for me personally, because it's a way to figure out what are the benchmarks that will expose the weaknesses so we can fix them. So it's not necessarily only that will allow you to validate that the system that you bought is delivering the performance you expect, but it's also you know, a tool that will allow you in time to see if you have any hiccup or anything that you have problems with the metadata performance. You can come back and run a small test, the benchmark, and then get some performance, and to be able to evaluate what's happening. Of course, we should be able to apply these benchmarks to other file systems, to POSIX, MPI, and CEF-DAOs in the future, but first we have to understand better that what do we want to benchmark? What do we want to measure out of the Lustre file system, which is pretty complex. It has multiple components, sometimes lots of components, so it's not always easy to understand if there's a bottleneck in a certain place, if that propagates through all the system, or if it's just only local, you can fix some component and everything is fine. So we also try to address very high performance of metadata also. So one of the discussions that maybe Brett was telling before was the small files. This is one of my projects that I'm trying, again, to improve the performance of small files and metadata for Lustre using PLFS, one example. So I can say that I'm trying to know what I'm doing. I don't, but I'm trying to know, so I'm on the way. And of course, the dream will be the tools to be applicable to anything, and in fact, I'm using tools that are not specific to Lustre at all, so. Okay, so just to give you an idea of what I proposed and what I succeed to do until now, and this is a report probably mid-term, let's call it. Maybe next year I'll have all the list, or maybe I don't need our whole list, because after the discussion of today, you'll understand that we have to figure out what's the path to go on this space. So we use the Mdtest, which is widely used in HPC. It's not maybe typical, but it's well used. I have another tool that I used called FSTest, which I didn't have a chance yet to use, but it's mostly intended to performance of PVFS. That was the initial build. Then I'm using the Postmark, which is well known probably by all the NFS users, and Netmist, which is a new tool that it will gonna be the Spec SFS 2014, hopefully, which is gonna be announced next month. And I took the code and modified and created an MPEE version that will be more suitable for my experiments that I did here. And it's written by Don Caps. So if you know who he is, you'll appreciate that he knows Lustre as well as NFS. So we are also trying to see if we can get a collection of synthetic tools that SARP is using in his system and maybe in other places. But so far we were not successful. And by the way, if you want to help this effort, there's a wiki. If you could go to the wiki, make comments or recommendations, I will be more than happy. Or upload tools, even better. And also we did we used MDS survey, which is the Intel Metadata workload simulator. And we are, in principle, only looking at open source tools. We don't want to have any particular private tool, so if somebody uses a very good tool, is very happy with it, it must be opened. Otherwise, we won't be able to use it, because we want to use it in the wider community of all the HPC, not only for Lustre users, as being our charter. So, in order to, I run the same benchmarks on two file systems in order to show that Flash can sometimes be good, not always, but you'll see some interesting results. And I think that somebody yesterday mentioned that it didn't make much difference. Well, I have a little proof that sometimes does, sometimes doesn't. So that's why I'm using two Lustre file system, one Lustre file system which is a typical on our VNX storage, and the other is Lustre file system using an SSD setup. We monitored just one thing because it was, we monitored many things, but I'm just addressing one of the tools because that's the most relevant to what I want to present to you and ask what will be the future. So I monitored both MDT and OST, and you could say, why do you care about OST? But it seems you'll see the results that it does. And then that's a question about what your application do, and then we can see that the tool is irrelevant. So we used MPEE-based benchmarks, Mdtest, Postmark, Netmist, and by the way, there's a version of Postmark that I modified also. It was MPEE, but it didn't work, so right now, if you are interested, I can give it to you, it's working. And we focused on metadata intensive benchmarks mostly, right? The configuration of the benchmarks was focused especially for metadata. For example, Netmist, you can do also IOs, any size, random, sequential, but I only focused on the metadata. So it's in order to compare them, several benchmarks, I had to make them similar. So that's what I did. And of course, I didn't use any new not yet, Lustre-specific tools, but I have all the intention to do it in the future. And if we have a conclusion about what direction we should go with this work, I would most certainly be sure to focus that we have the statistic that we need for in the Lustre. Hopefully that there will be interest of everybody, so we'll probably get that. So I'm starting with the Mdtest benchmark with a low load, what I show here, I show the IO stats for the MDS and for the OST. Unfortunately, there's an inversion in the color, so the green should be, in the first, the green is the OST, and on the right, the blue is the OST. So you can see the load on the MDS is about 60%. This is if you look in this case, you see that the performance of the SSD device, it's sometimes better, sometimes lower, so it's not conclusive, but it's similar on the flash file system or on SSD file system or on the disk file system. So then I went to a higher load with a larger number of threads, and you can see in this case the Lustre flash file system started to behave a little bit better in some of the areas and in some similar. So again, as I said, it's not yet conclusive that the flash file system, flash MDS won't improve performance. I think it will. Again, depends on some operation. It's not completely a sure bet. But you can see in some cases for file stats, much faster performance, right? For example, and file removal, file creation, so performance is better. Again, this performance, I didn't tune much the Lustre in order to get better performance. So this was kind of out of the box, just pure configuration using FDR for connection. So next benchmark is Postmark. And in this case, as you can see, I configured the Postmark to run similar operations with the ones of the Mdtest, otherwise I wouldn't be able to compare. So you can see in this case the load, and by the way, if you notice the previous slide, the load was pretty much 100%. So we are loading the MDS, both file systems to 100%. Maybe I should go back, so I should have mentioned this. As you can see, the load was pretty much similar, and pretty much we maxed the MDS servers, both cases. In this case, if you look at the MDS load, the MDS load is very low, so it's not sure that this benchmark, and I used similar operations. You can see that the performance is about the same on the Lustre 2, and the MDS is not used, which means that this made me think that maybe this is not a good benchmark. And I was wondering why it's not a good benchmark. I couldn't figure out yet, but it doesn't load enough the MDS. So then the question is, that's what I started to wonder in general. So what do we want to measure? Do we want to measure metadata operations and only monitoring the MDS, because that will be the possible bottleneck, or do we look also at OSTs? And I don't have an answer today, and I think that nobody has. So, because there is kind of similar behavior in Lustre of the metadata operations and random small files, random IOs. So I don't have a conclusion in this. That's why I said I'm going to ask questions, because that's, we have benchmark tools. We can look what the result is, but we need to be sure that we are concerned mostly on the performance aspect that we need to measure. And that's, I wish I would be more telling you, that's it, this is the one, because I cannot, so at this point. So I did the same thing comparing the two file systems, and again, in this case, actually, almost everywhere the performance was better for the flash file system. Again, that's a side note. I'm not here to sell you flash, Lustre on flash. I'm not, but just want to make justice to this. So you can see that there is value in using flash or SSDs. And in this case, also, you can see the the load is pretty low. So I'm, again, not sure that this Postmark tool is good enough unless maybe I can tune it differently to test a different way, but as you can see, it's not so stressful, so I'm not sure that we can measure the full performance of the MDS. So then I use this version of Netmist, which is also MPEE. I wrote myself the module, and I'm not sure that you want to read all this, it's just in general, so how it looks, the output of the benchmark, that will be the output that you'll see if in the future you use SpecSFS 2014. It's the same benchmark, except for this one is modified for MPEE, and you know, the performance numbers are acceptable from my perspective, looking at the system that I was looking. But as I said, when I mentioned that I want to use this tool to test Lustre, it was not. I was not received with understanding, and I think that I want to change that, but not for this tool. That's why maybe this is the wrong tool. So these are the results of Netmist, and as you can see, as compared to the other where the OST's load was pretty low, you can see here the green, which is real green. That's the OST, right? You can see that the load on the MDS was decent, was 90%, but there was also a load on the 30% on the OSTs. By the way, this is the average over all the...
It says green is the MDS.
I might be wrong. The green could be the... I don't remember. Oh, yeah, sorry. The blue is the OSS and the green is the, in this case. So, which means even worse, because if I want to measure metadata and then I got a lot of traffic to the OSS, is it correct? Again, it might be correct. Maybe it might be that that's all everybody wants. But I don't know. From my perspective, I'm not sure because I don't have real applications running on this file system to know the behavior. What's better, what's worse? I didn't know. So anyways, as you can see, there is load on both components. So now, is the benchmark the right benchmark? If it is, maybe that's the one we want to go for because it shows both. Now, it has the flexibility to change, for example, to do much less number of IOs at all. So, but I did the similar workload on the IO sizes as I did Mdtest. Otherwise, I couldn't compare. So that could be also a result of the comparison, as you can see in this case, but the two file systems are behaving pretty much similar. And that's why when I started to wonder if it's not because we put too much load on the OSSs, which is not what we want to measure. But again, I don't know. So I had some discussions with some people from DOE, and I couldn't get any answer that I could say, okay, that's the answer. So again, I think the results are interesting, and I cannot say that I'm unhappy with them, but I'm unhappy with the fact that I don't know what I'm doing. So, I mean, what's the final goal? Then I said, okay, so let's see if I can do a similar again. I tried to, as much as possible, to emulate the same type of workload comparing to Mdtest and all the others. So this is what I got on the results. Unfortunately, I couldn't run completely full run on my flash system, so Branislav ran it for me. Thank him very much. And as you can see, the numbers are pretty much similar, and I don't have the load for it. So I don't think that, and this is what I used. That's so I assume that people that using more frequently this could help me maybe change the profile and maybe fixing the little bug that I had so I could run it on a flash. So those are the benchmarks that I discussed. Again, I think that the question is in the air. What do we want? And I assume that maybe there's majority in one direction or maybe not. So maybe everybody has a different experience when talking about metadata performance of their Lustre file system, or maybe they didn't care. So I assume that the didn't care won't work, because you don't care until you got hurt, until you have a large system that is supposed to do very well, and all of a sudden your metadata performance, which was maybe for one application out of 10, critical. The other 9 are okay because they do more large IOs, but there's one which is more metadata intensive, and then for that you are judged. And it could slow down the entire machine because of that, right? So then the questions to be asked are, should we focus on MDS, MDD performance? You saw that there are cases when the MDS is almost saturated, so you try more performance, you won't get it. And by the way, what you didn't see, that I tried to load more, and then it was over, so I couldn't do anything more. So it crashed, actually. So that's why I stopped where it was, the results were the maximum. And first I didn't look at IO stats, and it crashed. So I said, oh, okay, so let me look. And then, yeah, I saw that lower, one step lower, everything was 9%. So anyways, that's, again, I'm running spec for years, maybe from the beginning, actually, from 15, 16, 17 years. So I know that this metadata is a big problem. NFS has also the problem of data, but here, we focus only on metadata, so the data, we know it's good. So that's why I didn't test even, because all these benchmarks, you can do IOs also. Large IOs, small IOs, you can do mix. But I didn't because I wanted to focus on metadata, because I think that's one of the problems that we need to solve in Lustre. The others, it's easier to solve, and are solvable, and are solved, performance, configuration, things like this. PRFS can do end-to-end and all this stuff. But metadata, it is what it is. So, for example, one good step was the DNE, right? So yes, DNE is in the right direction. So I would love to see if we decide on one benchmark and to run on a system with several servers. So see if we can do something to prove that it will scale using this methodology. Also, currently, as I can tell you from my personal experience, there is a confusion, maybe not in this audience, but there's confusion in the commercial places between flash and MDS, about MDS. Flash and disk, and faster disk, slower disk, whatever. So we have customers that insist on a specific configuration with flash without having any proof to show them that, yeah, you spend more money, but we don't know. There are cases that will help us, cases will not help. So we need a characterization. We don't have that. So today, everybody in the commercial is saying, okay, I want to buy an MDS which is flash only, and I want to buy disk, SAS, SATA, whatever. So I hope that such a tool will help clarify the situation of Lustre file system regarding metadata. I know I'm maybe aiming too much, but we have to start thinking about this, because if you were thinking about next steps being going to enterprise with Lustre, then this will be on the table for sure, because the enterprise not always want just the performance, the scratch performance, and then nothing. So I believe that we need to solve this problem one way, the benchmark problem first, and then maybe to address to some enhancements and improvements to the Lustre MDS to address that. Also, should we include in this the workload of very small random IOs to large files, to small files? As I said, the tools can do both. The question is, what do we want? And of course, you seeing my results, feel free to download the tools are also on the wiki, so play yourself and tell me what your systems do. I will be more than happy to get some input that my results won't be, I had 2 file systems, 2 Lustre that I built, but maybe they are not representative of anything, right? And again, how important is to test both data and metadata? Do we really care about both? It could be, because most of the workloads, in my opinion, that's my opinion, most of the applications will do both. But there will be applications that will be metadata intensive and some that don't care about metadata. So the question is it better to have this average image of your file system about metadata? Again, I'm not sure that anybody looked in this way like I'm looking today. Maybe it did, so I will be more than happy to talk about that. But I think I discovered something that I was really surprised about this unbalance or balance between them. So, and the question is, are these tools also good for benchmark and for characterization of your, such that you can say, okay, for this file system, I must have a MDS on flash. Or for this one, okay, 15K RPM is good enough, right? So those things will be good, because I think today people are, if you have more money, say, okay, let's buy a MDS, a flash, and it's more expensive, it should be better. No guarantees. And by the way, this is not only for, I have had this experience for GPFS as well. People are confused between, some people say, okay, let's flash, we have the money, let's do it. But there's no guarantee that, benchmark guarantee, that it's sure to deliver, to get what they expect. And yeah, that's a good point, is that we need to help users, especially you guys. I assume that you have your own tools and your own tricks and you know what you're doing, but maybe in the commercial space, wider commercial space, the ones that need, let's say, under 100 gigabytes per second, they don't know. So I hope that this work of this group will address that. And one thing that I would like to be sure that everybody understands, we want to make all these tools open source. As you understand that it's true that a vendor could come with their own tool and say, hey, look, my tool is better. But from my personal experience for 15 years of SpecSFS, I can tell you that SpecSFS is the only single most respected benchmark which is not perfect, but because it gives you the ability, for example, to benchmark a system that you, power system that you buy, to know what you bought. Even if you bought it already, but at least you know what you bought. So that's why I think that this tool should be open, and of course, open. SpecSFS is they make money selling benchmarks. I don't like that actually. For this community, that's not going to work. So. One question here is about Netmist. So in the beginning, about a year ago, I was trying to push this part of the MPI part of the Netmist into the SpecSFS 2014 that's coming in next month. And in the beginning, and then when I was rejected, I was not happy. But then I realized that it will be bad, because if we go that path, then the Lustre community won't be the one to pay to buy a benchmark like the NFS users, right? The server users. So probably it's the better right now. So what happened? There is a branch of Netmist which is open sourced, and that's the one I'm using. So, and there's pointer on the wiki. I think I don't have the pointer here, but you can find on the OpenSFS wiki. Yes, so another question is about share metadata workload. So I only use 8 clients, that's all I had. But in principle, it could be that these benchmarks characteristic will change with thousands and thousands of nodes. The question is, do we really want to benchmark with the entire supercomputer? Maybe it's not worth, because the file system is a file system. If you characterize it with a small number of nodes, that's it. And when you load it, yeah, it will be worse, but at least you know that you have some certainty about what the performance will be, some deterministic way of knowing, and such that, for example, if something bad happens, the systems work, application run very well, all of a sudden they run very bad. And it's a metadata problem. You won't go and run the benchmark on a 10,000, 50,000 cores, right? You won't. You'll need a small cluster, you'll run to see, comparing to what was when you bought the system, what is now. So. Okay, so that's pretty much what I had. Thank you, and the questions are welcome. And by the way, if you don't know SARP, he's here.
Hey, Sorin, did you correlate any of these tools that you use to benchmark together so that say all of them report the same results, or they are different, they're all over the place?
Okay, so to the extent of possible, I tuned the parameters of all these calls such that will address a certain ratio of reads, writes, stats. I couldn't say that I'm perfect. I wish, but I couldn't, because each benchmark has a different characteristic, so it's very difficult to, but I think from the results, I got comparable results, so there's a correlation between them. So that's the best I could do, and again, anybody can offer another tool, I'm more than happy. Yes?
So one of the areas that I think is lacking in, especially metadata benchmarking, is that when you run a test and it creates files and then it stats files and then it unlinks files, typically you're not exceeding the cache on the metadata server, right? And so I think one of the areas where Flash is going to
I did my best to try to prevent it.
Yeah,
so,
but I just think, I think one of the areas where Flash is going to show its superior performance would be in like cold cache, removal of large directories or something like that.
But again, you have to understand, I tried to load the benchmark as much as to overboard by the way, the clients were only 32 gig clients, so it was not, but again, I agree with you, 8 clients could have a lot of cache, except for I tried with Mdtest and the Netmist, I tried to push as high as I could, and then maybe you're right, but it crashed, so I had no other way to know, so. Sorry. Of course, before every test I flash the cache, sorry, don't take me wrong, but when you run a test for 20 minutes, it's enough, but if you run a test for 5 minutes, maybe the cache is, so I agree with you, that's a lack, but I'm trying to use tools that exist. I didn't write my tools, but point taken.
All right. When you run these different benchmarks, you're asking the question, which benchmark should we use? And it seems to me that if you're getting different results from the different benchmarks, then what you're really doing is you're running different loads against the file system. And if you're running different loads, you're going to get different results. But then the only benchmark that ever is going to matter is the customer's load.
That's correct. That's always true. I'm trying just to help to figure out if something happens. Yeah.
But it seems then, if you're getting different answers, that there's no answer. That you will have to run all of the different tests.
I have some answers, but I didn't have the right one, so that's why I'm asking you guys. Maybe there's no answer. Maybe you're right. I agree with you. I don't disagree. But I said the best we could do is just to measure something that people understand. So that's why, for example, I'm asking the question between what do you want to load, the OSS, OSTs, or the MDTs? I don't know. But I can tell you there's benchmark, and by the way, the results are comparable. So what I did actually, I tried to push to maximize the performance on each of them, such that, okay, they are not perfect, but at least correlate. So I should have put a slide. I have a correlation with the test. So the results here are the one that correlate. The one that didn't correlate, I didn't do. So I agree. I mean, again, everybody feel free to join the group, our metadata benchmark group. I'm not, totalitarian or something. So
Nathan raises, a really important question, and that is, if you're getting different results, how can you choose one? And, I guess I'm an idealist. I'm thinking, well, okay, maybe if we understood the benchmarks better, then we could maybe, again, I'm knocking on wood here, yes. Maybe we could have some volunteers from the community to help stitch together a benchmark that covers multiple cases.
That's true. That's correct.
If we were to understand the benchmarks themselves and how they're different and what questions each one is asking.
Well, look, I would write myself a benchmark, but I have too many things to do. So if the community is willing to jump in and help, of course, I will be more than happy. And by the way, the question I asked was not which benchmark. I asked, what do you want? You want to measure just the MDS or you want to measure MDS? That's the first question. After that, yes, I can go and repeat the test. And I actually repeat, but I didn't see any difference. So that's why I need to understand if people have ideas, and we inside the group we talked about that, right? And
so yeah, that's a good idea. Someone should maybe jump in and stitch together a better benchmark that emulates different workloads and etc. There's a work group to do that. Why don't you just put where the money is and come and join us and help us do that?
Well, as resident, jackass and customer, I want everything all the time.
Come and help us.
I mean, here's a question.
We have been asking these questions for a long time, and this is the first shot we have taken at Sorin's work, his team's work. We have more questions than we have answers for it this time. And we decided if we pose the questions to the larger audience, maybe you guys can provide us feedback to tell us whether we are in the correct direction or whether we are doing something.
And I think it's very important for the community, everybody, to go to the wiki, and we have other benchmarks we're looking at. So,
how about looking at the some of the big deployments of the Lustre and determine what are the typical workloads that they have, right? Are they doing X number of stats versus X number of creation, deletion, and then use that as a guideline for the benchmark, whether you want to write it or you want to use one of these to match with that characteristics and say, I want 20% stats, etc.
Yeah, I misexplained something until now. So our initial intention was not to run benchmarks. Our initial intentions were to get statistics from people that using and for metadata benchmarks, and I got none. So I said, okay, it's too important to leave it. So that's why I start to run myself in order to, to kind of compensate and come and ask the question here. Maybe you cannot give me the data, but you can tell me, oh yeah, I'm using this or that. So
I think that will be a critical information initially, so that based on that you can build your benchmarks, right?
The wiki is there. Please put anonymous even, it doesn't matter.
So before the wiki, the benchmarking work group has a face-to-face meeting this Thursday afternoon. If you want to participate, come and join the meeting. It's an hour long, so it won't kill you.
Sorry, just one more comment. I think you should be running ls-l continuously during these benchmarks.
I don't like it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Neda. Thank you.